Dear Cosmo babies, today we have a special guest with us, Kristin Rankin, who is the owner and founder of Dresscode Project. I'm your host, Annie MacArthur, and I have my co-host, Aaron Gray, with me today. So let's jump right into it. Welcome, Kristin.
Hey, Annie. Hey, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
Do you want to go ahead and just kind of give a little background on yourself and what Dresscode Project is?
Yeah, for sure. So again, my name is Kristin Rankin. I use they, them pronouns. I am the founder of an organization called the Dresscode Project. And what we basically do is we help hairstylists, hair salon owners, everyone in the hair industry understand what it means to create a gender affirming hair space so that folks who identify outside of the gender binary can find services that are affirming to them and feel welcomed and look the way they feel.
Awesome.
And Kristin, can you tell us how that all started? Like when did you just wake up and decide to start this?
Yeah, I think it took a minute, but I've been a hairstylist for 16 years and I am from Toronto, Canada. I opened a salon in 2008, my first salon in the East End of Toronto, which is a really diverse part of the city in every way, but especially in the community of the queer community, folks who identify within that community. And so I had a super diverse clientele. Also, from the moment opening it, I, as a queer person, put a rainbow sticker on the front of the window so people would see it. We know that's like the universal queer bat signal that it's safe to come in here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I had a large queer clientele. And so that was in 2008. And then we had gender affirming services, just meaning that we didn't, say men's cut or women's cut. It was by length. And I had a woman in 2016 come into my salon, get a haircut. And the next day she tweeted that it was the first time she'd ever got a haircut at a hair salon and been made to feel like a woman. And the reason why that was so impactful is because she identified as a transgender woman. And I think, she had been out for 5 years, if I remember correctly, through our conversation. So to me, what that meant was that for 5 years, she was either not getting her haircut, which is really, really common in not only the queer industry, but in the queer community, but in the community of folks who identify outside of the binary. Mm-hmm. So say gender nonconforming folks, non-binary folks, or folks that are transitioning. And, it was just sad, really. I think as hairstylists, we always get super excited when we know that we have given someone a haircut that really makes them feel good. So I think I had a moment of that when she left, okay, she loved her haircut, Then when I got that tweet, that moment turned into man, this is really kind of sucks that the industry that I really love being in is not understanding or recognizing or celebrating the community that I so strongly identify with. And folks like herself were, as a result, suffering and not being able to enjoy their hair. And and that's really what started it all. And I had no clue what I was doing at all at first. I just sent out a bunch of emails to salon owners in Toronto that I knew that I thought might be interested. And it was really, really pleasantly surprised to get some emails back that were really positive and that were, people were interested in supporting the idea. And one of my good friends wrote back in an hour and she was like, fuck yeah, I'm in. So it was a very positive, reinforcement. And then it just kind of went from there and sort of stumbled through, learning how we could develop it. And now we, the biggest thing initially was creating a directory, which you both are very familiar with. And, that directory is essentially for clients to find gender affirming salons in their area by typing in, the name of their city or their zip code or postal code. And for hairstylists to find gender affirming salons if they are coming out of school and they want to work in an inclusive salon.
what I really love about your particular directory as well, because it's not one of a kind, right? It is the first one there was, but you vet those salons. So you are making sure that those salons are truly inclusive spaces. Can you talk about the criteria that you have for a salon to join and be on that list? Like, what do they need to do to be eligible?
Yeah, I think it's really important that they are vetted first and foremost, because we say that we're creating safer spaces. So we can only say that if we're actually doing something to ensure that that's what's happening. I think it's important to note that we also say safer and not safe, because we can, as in life, you can never fully guarantee anything. And we, have over 550 salons in our directory, and we are not in every one of them all the time, or usually ever, really. So we can't guarantee that they're always going to be safe. But the reason we vet them is to say, look, we've done our due diligence to make sure they at least understand the basics and the foundations of what it means to create a safer space, and then go from there. And that criteria starts off first when usually what happens is folks find us and go onto our website and they submit a form. And that form has little questions like, do you have gender affirming washrooms and things like that? So that's showing that they already understand what that means in a space, in an environment. And then when they submit that they want to become a member, we actually send them a quiz. And that quiz asks them like general knowledge of the queer community and what it means to have those identifying inclusivities within salon industry. And then we go from there. And then we offer, as soon as they do enroll and become a member, we then send them digitally a 25-page infographic that I created personally with the 519 Center in Toronto. And they specialize in inclusivity and diversity training, especially within the LGBTQ plus communities. So together with their knowledge and training of that, my experience being a hairstylist and a queer person, we put together, it's almost like a day in the life of a hair service and how to change that generalized hair service into a gender affirming hair service. And then on top of all of that, there is further opportunities for our members to get training and education from us at a discounted rate.
That's awesome.
Kristin, do you think that someone could take the 25 pages of education that you send when they become an Alliance member, and do you think that they could then train their staff on at least the basics? Or do you think that, someone who is going to be an independent, maybe suite owner or whatever that looks like, when they receive that 25 pages, will they be able to, one, implement the things, and two, have like a pretty good understanding of pronouns and usage and dead naming and kind of all of those like things that go with this?
Yeah, that is a really good question, Erin. We encourage the owners of the salon or the solo space owner to take that infographic that we send them digitally and print it out and actually like keep it as almost a handheld manual in physical digital copy in our physical copy in their salon space, so that they can review it regularly and they can go over it with the staff. We ask for payment from organizations because when we first started this, we actually did it for free. And then we started to find that there was no accountability on the salon or the solo suite owner's part. So we were getting a lot of messages from clients saying, you say that this space is vetted and they're on your directory, but I had this experience. So we would contact them and be like, hey, what's up? And then go from there. Like, we would not just leave it. And if the person, like the owner, was responsive and wanted to work with us to, enhance the experience of that person or people in the queer communities, then great. We would just say, hey, like, you really need to like follow what we've given you and stuff like that. But if they weren't, we would actually remove them from the directory. But it was like, I started to realize there was no accountability there. They had no reason to really follow up. Yeah.
Totally.
Like it's really great to say you're an inclusive space, right? But it's also easy to not follow through if there's no reason to be accountable. And unfortunately, the world that we live in, what is the number one way to make someone accountable? Have them pay for something, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, I just paid for these shoes, so I'm going to take care of them, versus someone, giving me
a story about that.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, so we really ask them to take that, print it out, allow their stylist to read through it, or even spend some time, put some time aside. Like I know that a lot of salon owners, when they have a staff, like they'll actually have monthly meetings. So like if you become a DCP member salon and you don't want to take further education from us, then print off that digital copy because you just paid for it. And actually make your space gender affirming. Sit down with your staff at the next staff meeting and go through that. It's a very, very, very thorough booklet. Like it's about 25 pages. It's an infographic, so it's visual. We all know hairstylists are great with visuals. That's why we made it that way. And it's very thorough. It goes from like understanding basic terminology within the queer communities, understanding the differences between someone who identifies, let's say, as bisexual and pansexual, understanding pronouns. And if you accidentally misgender someone by not using their proper pronouns, the 3-step process we recommend to correct it, and understanding that that's okay. Understanding there are no stupid questions. If you're being authentic and you generally want to know more, we can teach you how to find out more, but also that it's okay to ask if the interest is authentic and true, and then like what a gender affirming hair service is, what that entails, microaggressions, all of it. There's so much information in there that really it's pretty thorough.
Part of the reason that for me, it was really important to have you on this podcast is because we talk to students. That's our primary focus. The people listening are students, branding professionals, things like that. I think as another person in the queer community, it is so important to start understanding inclusive language and inclusive services and what that means and how to set yourself up in the future for that. Because unfortunately, a lot of schools today are still teaching men's and women's haircuts. And I think that it's so important to talk to this younger generation, or even just people who are entering professional beauty and have no idea about some of the things that happen in the industry. I think it's such an important conversation to start from day one about how to change that mindset and change the understanding behind why men's versus women's cuts can be detrimental, especially to the queer community, and it's not even just the queer community, but it's like even just to women. Like women end up paying more money in general for beauty services. Women end up paying, or people who identify as women end up paying more. There's a big conversation in the US about something that is called the pink tax, which is women, people who identify as women tend to spend more money on things just because they're quote pink. They're branded towards us and people, that identify as female and things like that. What would you be able to say to a student right now who is in school, who is learning gendered services? What is a really easy way for them to take a step back and learn what they're teaching without having to learn the gendered portion of it?
Yeah. So I think that it's really important to ask questions and to have a really inquisitive, I think, learning mind, It's so easy. And I think now, as someone who's been in the industry for a while and as someone who's just not 25, I think it's so, looking back at things, I think of when I was younger and how it was just so easy to just ingest all the information that was coming at you and just accept it. As a rule, because we were taught that, do what you're told, don't speak back. That's right. Right. Like if you say anything and you go against the grain, you'll get fired, all of those things, and as we know, that's just not how the younger generations think. So I think they have a huge advantage over when I was, at their age, in their position, because I think they're naturally now encouraged to ask questions and to be inquisitive and find out more if they can. So that would be my number one is just don't accept that as the golden rule, hear what they have to say and take all the information that you feel is valid and is fair. And then for the rest of it, seek explanations elsewhere. The Dresscode Project is a really good place to find information out on our website and on our Instagram. We know that hairstylists have tons of one of our main currencies is Instagram, because it's also got photos and videos, and everything for us is visual.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have an incredibly educational and informative Instagram account. We put out a lot of information. We have a very solid message and branding around what it is that we're doing. And it is geared towards hairstylists mainly. It's not exclusive to hairstylists, but it's definitely geared towards that because this is where it started. The entire reason that I didn't call it like the inclusive hair organization was because I wanted it to be something more, if ever it could be, so I wanted it to have a more generic name. Dresscode was like one of the first things that came to my mind because I grew up in an Irish Catholic community and I had to go to Catholic school and we had to wear uniforms and I had to wear like the female identifying uniform all the time and I hated it. So it was really kind of like, my homage to going against the dress code and revolting against it, but that's why I named it that. So it could be more than the hair industry. It's just that we started in the hair industry. Absolutely. So I think asking questions, and just like looking for different resources. I mean, it's almost impossible to not Google, hair, inclusive hair and not find us.
Kristin, if you could tell a student stylist, or give them like one piece of information that you think would be like the most helpful on this journey to creating inclusive spaces, what would be like the thing that you taught them? Like if you just know one thing, where do you start?
Yeah. Like if you're in school or coming out of school and you just want to know more, again, like find us on social media for sure, reach out, ask questions. I've already actually had students do that. Had a student in Canada who reached out and was in a school that we actually tried to work with, a big school in Canada, probably the biggest school in Canada. They wanted to reach out to us. They wanted to do like a curriculum with us. And, they backed out at the last minute, which happens a lot with this professional beauty industry because, again, we were requiring a donation for our services and, they all of a sudden got cold feet. But this student was like, hey, like I see you on social media and I'm in school and we're still learning gendered stuff. Like, what do I do? And I was like, well, here's our information. And I think this is the best piece of advice that I could have given this person. This person was also in the queer community, also identified as a trans person. And I just said, take our information to your educator and show your educator what is out there and what is going on in the hair industry today, and tell them why they need to change their language and their teachings around haircuts in schools. Because it's great that we're able to take salons and say to them, hey, this is how you should be functioning now. We know that this world is constantly about change. Everything is constantly changing. And in the queer community, it changes even faster. Language, terminology, all of it. You always have to be on top of it. And so we're doing catch up by going to these salons and saying, hey, you should make a gender affirming salon. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were actually able to reach the students when they were in school and learning, and we had a curriculum in those schools that was maybe a week long on gender affirming services. And then they'd be already coming out, these little like armed hairstylists going into the salons as well. And then saying to the salons, like, we learned this in school. Why aren't you doing it this way?
What's so funny is, Annie and I, that's 100% the reason we built a social curriculum for students to learn how to do social properly while you're in school, but also to learn like the branding and the marketing and all of those like things that matter when building your personal brand. And this is such a huge thing. But I think that schools, just having been in the schools system, your educators are open to bringing in new things. They are looking for things. That was part of my job in a couple of places, was bringing in guest speakers. And I think, with DCP, it's such a great resource because as a student, why can't you reach out to a salon who is on the directory and ask them to come in and speak during your homeroom or your powwow or whatever your school calls it, because they'll have the information. They're already putting into practice, what dress code is about, and it's a great place to maybe extern or assist at, if you are looking for a space that is going to fit your needs, being a safer space.
Something that was really kind of obviously hindsight is 2020, and I went to school quite a few years ago, but something that I always found, so before I entered the beauty industry, I was on my own journey of self-identification and understanding who I was. And it's a journey that I think never ends, honestly. And in the beginning of that, I always looked at the beauty industry as such a safer space for queer people, because from the outside looking in, you're like, okay, this is full of artists. This is full of people who have the ability to, like, they truly get to be themselves. You get to find, the people that are like-minded, and you get to build your own community within professional beauty. And then when I started school, realizing how incredibly gendered things are. And that doesn't always necessarily start at the school level, but that starts at the educational level that the schools bring into their schools. You know, it's like there really is such this like bigger picture that you don't even realize. And then realizing, okay, I'm learning women's cuts, I'm learning men's cuts. Like, instead of learning long haircuts and short haircuts, like they're very intensely gendered. You also see things a lot differently, because there's typically people that identify as female are the majority of your classmates. And then typically you have people that identify as male as a very small portion of your classmates. But then on top of that, I went to school with someone who was transgendered. They were born a male, transitioned to female, and we became very, very close and very good friends. And it always broke my heart so badly whenever they would call for them over the intercom, because they would dead name them every time. It was always so embarrassing, especially if they were with a client at the time, because they would have to acknowledge that is me, and I have to leave you right now to go do whatever it is that they need me to do. And it's such a larger picture that I think people don't always realize when they're in school, how even going and making one small change, going to your people in the office and saying, hey, change these things that you're doing. Don't dead name someone over the intercom, or, understand what their name that they go by and call them that. Because I am someone, I was born female. I identify as female. I am a part of the queer community, but I was given a different name at birth, and I changed my name. And even though I don't consider it a dead name or anything like that, when people refer to me by that name, it is incredibly irritating, and so many other emotions that come along with it. I cannot imagine the struggle and the pain and the embarrassment of someone being dead named in a position like that when I was in school. And I think people don't realize that they have more power. They have more power than they realize, going and making these small changes in a beauty school environment, or even just looking at things differently, to set yourself up to be different, to be a better ally, even within the professional beauty industry, when you do graduate and go on to a salon or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's like a really impactful statement in itself, like just that you have more power than you think you do, Absolutely. And also, just because you're challenging something that is considered to be the norm, it doesn't mean that you're being like, necessarily like trying to create conflict or anything like that. It just means that you're questioning and disrupting. And Absolutely. I think that's a really healthy way to think. And I think that anybody who dissuades from that line of thinking, it's because they are afraid of change, and they are afraid of what can happen because they're comfortable. And it's so much easier to remain comfortable than it is to challenge yourself and to try something that is maybe going to make you uncomfortable for a minute, but is also just going to help you become better, and just more enlightened.
Definitely.
Have more things in your toolkit, So I think like students challenging things in a respectful, I always try to encourage respect, because I think as, anybody in this world, I think we all want to be respected. So I think that more success can come from respect than like, an argument or something. So I'll always try to like place things in a respectful way when I am challenging someone. But I think like it's just an important way to function on a daily basis, is just questioning things. And hopefully with any luck, if you have a educator that is like aware and respectful of that and can also like think inwardly, then you could see a change happen. And like, that is an incredibly powerful tool to have, because I started this as one person. I didn't have, anyone famous behind me backing me up. I didn't have like any kind of money, that I had a savings of anywhere that was just waiting to be spent on something. I was just kind of like, I just need to see this happen because it's just not okay. And it's also to what you were saying, Annie, like it's incredibly frustrating as someone who was born, a certain way, like, with either female, male, or both anatomies, and you identify differently. It's incredibly frustrating to constantly be misgendered, to constantly be, like you said, possibly dead named. I can't speak to the dead naming at all, but I do identify as a non-binary person. I use they, them pronouns. I still, have female anatomy, and I am fine with that right now. But I don't like being called ma'am. I don't like being called she. I don't, I don't like it when I'm out with a group of friends and then someone says, oh, hey, ladies, how can I, like it just drives me crazy, drives me bonkers. And sometimes I'll say something and sometimes I won't. It just depends on, where I am, how I'm thinking, but it's a frustrating thing, and it really is because we have been programmed to think a certain way about a lot of different things in society.
How do you, because I feel the same way as you. When someone calls me ma'am, I literally pause for a second and have to like take a breath and like, they don't know, I can't get mad at this is because I hate being called ma'am. I hate it so much. I hate being called miss or ma'am. I use she, they pronouns, but there are a lot of times that very incredibly female driven terminology. I do not like being talked to that way or identified that way. And those are my personal feelings about it. How do you, or like, what advice would you give to people? Because I know that I feel that when sometimes these types of things are brought up, people are like, well, you can't make everybody happy, or you don't know how, like, one person would take it the wrong way. Some person doesn't, they don't care. Like, so I think that people get frustrated who are on the outside of the queer community because they're like, oh, well, you never know or whatever. What advice would you give to maybe those people who are part of the professional beauty industry that maybe don't understand that? Like, what advice would you give them to help better understand that, like, yes, you cannot make everybody happy all the time, but
yeah, I mean, I think especially if you're going back to the beauty schools and cosmetology schools and stuff like that, I think it starts in the chair, so it can be something that is repetitive and practiced so that people get used to it. It's like habit forming. And so always introducing yourself with your pronouns in certain situations, not like walking up to a restaurant and saying, hey, I'm Kristin, my pronouns are they, them, and I have a reservation, not necessarily like that, but like, maybe if you're in school and you are in the portion of your schooling where you're doing practical work, introducing your pronouns to your client and then being like, hey, can I ask you what yours are? If you're working in a classroom with other people, helping them understand it, being a queer person that is open to helping allies be allies and be better, authentic allies. I think a lot of people will say it's not my job. Straight people need to learn themselves. Go Google it. That just drives me bonkers. The whole like, go Google it. I get it. Some people are tired. Some people don't want to always have to explain themselves, but this is how I look at it. If you want to make progress and if you want to help be a person who creates change, then you have to participate as well. And yes, it sucks. It may be difficult and maybe you're tired of it. But if you stop, then maybe everybody's going to stop. And then where are we? So whenever I do classes, for example, like one of the first things I say is, by the way, there are no stupid questions here, especially if I know there are allies or people that want to be allies in the room that are learning from me. I want to make sure they feel safe because it has also been my experience as a queer person that sometimes, and I know that this is from past trauma and triggers and whatnot, queer people are not the most open to helping that way. They're not the most open to saying like, yeah, sure, I can help you understand that a little bit better. And so I just feel like it is important to say, hey, like, listen, we're all learning here. You're here to learn. I'm here to help educate and train and answer any questions to the best of my ability and to my knowledge. There are no stupid questions. Please feel free to ask them here, especially because I am teaching you, so this is the place to learn. But then also maybe like moving forward in that, so for allies, for them to say, listen, like, I really want to learn better. And I know that I am not a queer person, but I want to know how I can be better serving to your community. What would you suggest, if you don't mind me asking? Like, I know a lot of people don't like that, but it really, like, the only alternative to that is allies feeling ostracized and allies feeling, well, the community is, they're not helpful, or they get mad, or because I've heard that from allies too. Everything I say is wrong, I've heard that as well. So there's like two sides to every story, So even if you're a queer person that doesn't want to maybe answer questions for somebody, you could direct them, send them in the direction where they might be able to find information. And like in our situation, any allies, any queer people that are in the hair industry in any capacity that want to learn more, go to our website, go to our Instagram account, like, read all about it. It's all there for you to learn. It's just about how much you want to absorb.
I think that really kind of complements this idea that we all share of anti-cancel culture, that rather than canceling people, we could educate, we could allow growth, we could help them understand, or they could take those steps to go through the process of becoming better, rather than the moment someone says something wrong, that we're just like, well, you're done.
Totally.
We've canceled you. Like, there's no coming back, because it really doesn't allow for growth. And I think when we give people the opportunity to be better, that is how we create a safer community for everyone.
Yeah, like cancel culture is just, I think it's just so dangerous. I think it's got such a negative connotation, I mean, we are human beings. Like, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, all of us. I always tell the story about how one of my closest friends that I've been friends with 20 years, both of us out at a young age, identifying, going to queer bars together and stuff like that. The first year in the pandemic, called myself and the rest of our friends and said, hey, I just want to let you all know I'm transitioning. I'm going to be going from this name to this name. And, we were like, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing it. And they came back to Toronto for the next year for an event. And we all spent some time together. And they were just getting used to, he was just getting used to me using they, them pronouns. And I was just getting used to calling him, and using his chosen name. And all we did all night long was totally fucking just misgender each other all night long. And then we both went outside for a minute and we just laughed. We were like, oh my God, look at us. Like, we're both queer people. We're both super aware of this. Their wife is like heavily into the queer community and educating and all that. I educate. And all we did all night long was misgender each other. And all we could do was laugh about it, because we understand that we're going to make mistakes. Even two people that are in this community, not only in this community, but also identifying differently, are sitting here using the wrong pronouns, misgendering each other all night long. Like,
absolutely.
Like, we just need to understand that we are not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But what is so great about that is that I always find that you best learn from the mistakes that you make.
Definitely.
And taking that lesson and really being able to apply it. Now, sure, if somebody makes a mistake and, the community at large wants to jump on them, give them a minute and let them have a say about it, rectify it. And then if they continue to double down, and just go along with that narrative, then you can say, listen, I've done all I can do here. It's clear to me that you're not here for all the right reasons. So I'm done with this conversation. But outwardly canceling someone in that cancel culture way, in my terms, is just a form of incredible, like, bullying. And I'm not down with it at all. I'm not down with bullying. I'm just not down with not being able to, like, accept people, and help them understand. And I think cancel culture has really not served us well at all.
Absolutely. I think that we have to allow people to make mistakes who make mistakes to learn from those mistakes, just like you said. I actually have a story about me and you, Kristin, because we do know each other outside of this podcast. Like we know each other in real life and like our friends in real life and
IRL.
Yeah. And like something I know for me, something that is, I have been working on it for a very long time and it is really tough for some reason, but I have been working on getting rid of the terminology guys from my language. And years ago, Kristin and I were on a phone call and I said, Kristin, I need you to be my accountability buddy. If I say the term guys, I need you to immediately jump in and stop me and say something else to get it into my brain, say folks, or just, and I gave you the permission to do that, to cut me off, say a different word so I could correct it myself and start learning a different way of doing that. And I think that that's something more people need to do, is that if you are in a position where you are actively wanting to learn and change and be more inclusive, is get an accountability buddy, get someone that has the permission to cut you off immediately and change what you just did, and in a way that, because for me, why it was so helpful was that it gave me the opportunity just to quickly fix it without having to apologize or anything like that, because it's not about me. I don't need to make it about me in that moment of, oh, I'm so sorry, because that's about me. That's not about the people that I'm either talking to or about or anything else. For me, at least, it's helpful, but other people might also find something like that helpful, where it just quickly changes your thought process and you can get into the habit of getting rid of those terminology or whatever it is that you're trying to do and just correct that behavior in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Before we go though, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about, because I know you've got some events coming up and we have Pride coming up. And I know that DCP is heavily involved in, some different activities. And so I wanted people to have a chance to find out where they could do more with you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So every Pride we do try to do something. Last year, so we have also had as part of like the Dresscode Project side hustle, we've always had this little thing we call the Gender Free Haircut Club, where we get hairstylists and salons to donate their time and their skills to give free haircuts to marginalized queer folks, so they can get haircuts that make them look the way they feel as well. And last year, since it was the first Pride after the pandemic and people were in most places were able to gather again, which meant that people could come into salons and get haircuts, we thought, let's try to make a Gender Free Haircut Club Day. So we did that last year on June 12th, and we had 50 salons in North America participate in the Gender Free Haircut Club Day. And at the very same time, in respective time zones, we did a 4-hour Gender Free Haircut Club Day where we gave free haircuts. And it was really awesome. This year, we are doing that again, but we're leveling it up a little bit. As you both know, I also work with the Left Brain Group, which is an agency within our pro-beauty hair industry that is kind of like representing folks that are doing things differently in the hair industry. And we are doing this event that I'm very excited for. I know you two have also been involved in helping us get the word out there, but it is for anyone in the hair industry and anybody not in the hair industry, to be honest with you. But there's going to be a lot of like education, a lot of fun, and then the Gender Free Haircut Club Day. We're doing it the last weekend of June this year, and we're actually doing it live in New Orleans. It's called Queers for the Crown. And, as we all know, that sometimes people refer to your hair as your crown. And we are a bunch of queers that are going to be putting this on. So we thought that was an appropriate name. But the other reason that we called it that is because along with creating safer spaces as a learning day and a day where we're bringing in speakers and stuff like that, we are also doing an event that night that is based on the balls of the early 80s and 90s in New York City, where a lot of POC transgender people would get together and underground celebrate houses and compete, really just for their own culture and community. And so we're taking that beautiful, beautiful idea. Anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, Madonna based Vogue off of that concept because she spent time in these spaces with queer folks. And also, just a few years ago, there was an incredible show on FX called Pose that has everything to do with the ball culture and community. And it's amazing. So we wanted to turn that into a hair event. So the first night we'll be doing a ball, and the ball is going to be different houses competing, but instead of it being dancing and strutting your stuff, it's going to be different categories of hair. So, best vivid color, just things like that. Obviously the best gender affirming hair, those kinds of categories. And we are going to have a panel of judges, and we are going to have an MC for the night, and we're going to have different houses, which are essentially going to be different salon teams. They don't even have to be in one salon. If you're, 4 or 5 hairstylists that want to come together as a house, you can name your house. So you'd be the house of whatever, and they all compete. And then the next day we're doing the Gender-Free Haircut Club Day. So that is our big Pride event. And we're very, very excited about it.
And people can find out about that on your Instagram, or is that the best place to go?
Our Instagram, so at the Dresscode Project, the Left Brain Group, at the Left Brain Group Instagram. We also have it. The Left Brain Group also has more information on their website. If you're interested in finding out more and also interested in purchasing tickets, you can purchase them there. There are some early bird specials and things like that too for people to look at. And this is for anyone. Again, you do not have to be a licensed hairstylist. So if you're someone who is in cosmetology school and you are interested in this and you want to come see the hair industry celebrate the queer community, this is what you want to come to. You don't want to miss it. And nothing has been done like this in person in our industry before.
I love this.
Yeah.
I feel like during Pride Month specifically, and in the North America, we celebrate Pride Month typically in the month of June. And something that Dresscode Project has actually talked quite a bit about before in the past is rainbow washing. You see that happen quite a bit in professional beauty, where rainbow washing is, companies come out, they changed everything to rainbows, they celebrate for the month. We give them a ton of money typically, because they put rainbows on everything. So we buy it. And then after the month of June is over, everything goes back to normal, and our community is no longer
for another year.
It doesn't matter. Like, we are pushed back to the side again. So it's a reason that I love DCP so much, and the events and the things that happen, because it is truly representative all year round of our community, and just trying to make professional beauty, which is considered typically a safe space for queer people, truly a safer space for queer people within and out of professional beauty. Yeah,
it's super important. And to your point of rainbow washing, like, it's super important to be an ally all year long, like not just in June, or not just because you're going to a queer event or you have a queer friend or anything like that, like, it's just incredibly important to always be an ally to that. And of course I speak of this topic because it's what I'm involved in, I have knowledge on, I educate myself regularly in, but we can say that about so many different things, right? Outside of this, but we're talking about queer community, and this is where we look at it. It's very funny. As you both know, we are sponsored by Pantene, have been sponsored by Pantene in the past, and Pantene is not a professional beauty company. They're more of a commercial beauty company, but they are the only beauty company that has fully stepped up to the plate and become an authentic ally that seriously does want to change the message they have put out in the 80 some odd years that they've been in business, to make it more inclusive for all folks. And, we have had a ton of contact with different beauty schools, cosmetology schools, with different professional beauty brands. And, they want to talk, but they don't want to walk it, there's still a lot of hesitation there, so absolutely. I always say to people, you can say what you want about Pantene, but they have been there and they've put the money and the work in. And if you think that somebody else can do better, and you are in a salon that utilizes that brand, or you're in a school, go talk to the head of the school, the manager, whomever it is. Go talk to that brand if you use them in your salon, and ask them why they're not a part of the Dresscode Project.
And Dresscode Project, just as a side note as well, it is a global community. We're not just talking about North America. Like, there are salons all around the world that are a part of the Alliance, the Salon Alliance, and it is people all over the globe that can become part of Dresscode Project, can learn from Dresscode Project, and can bring you out for classes as well.
Oh yeah, we have salons all over North America. I think the majority of them are in the US. We have a bunch in Canada. We have a lot in Australia, because Kevin Murphy is a huge friend of the Dresscode Project. He really believes in what we're doing, and so he was super generous with the salons that are Kevin Murphy salons, and he brought me out to Vegas to speak, and he was just really wonderful with that. So we have this like very strange big group of salons in Australia that are DCP members, and we're just doing a training with a salon coming up in a couple of weeks in Britain, in the UK, Trevor Sorby salons, that are actually launching a menu change that's going to be gender affirming, and they're getting training from us in figuring out how to do it the right way. We are slowly making the steps, and I think low and slow is kind of our motto, because it does take a lot, as you both know, to not just like say, hey, I want to be part of our club and not do anything about it, but to say, hey, do you want to be part of change? And then make sure they understand what that means.
All right. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to Kristin coming on today. And if anyone is looking for more information, please find Dresscode Project on Instagram at the Dresscode Project, or you can go to their website at dresscodeproject.com. Those two places are going to be incredible to start. And if you are looking for events, or you want to reach out about education with Kristin particularly, go to the Left Brain group, and you can find more information about upcoming events and how to have some education and training with Kristin there. For anyone who is interested in more information about rainbow washing or anything like that, we are actually going to have another episode coming up in a couple months with Kristin, where we are going to actually dive much deeper into that, because it is really a huge topic, and how to spend your queer dollars wisely. So make sure that you keep an eye out on the podcast for future episodes. And thank you to everyone listening. And thank you again to Kristin and my co-host, Erin. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.